Hello and welcome back to another episode of Automotivated here with Bolt-On Technology. I am super excited. We have a special guest on today. We have Jay, who is the co-founder and president of WrenchWay and Find a Wrench. Just like a lot of people in our industry, he grew up in the automotive repair industry and has spent his entire professional career, helping automotive repair businesses. He and his team focus on improving the industry as a whole while giving shops the tools that they need to find talented people, which we know a lot of shops struggle with. So Jay, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. I'm a big fan of everything that Bolt-On does, and I'm really excited to talk with you today.
Yeah, you know what? It's great because I love that we were able to, touch base before this. We had a really good conversation. And, the technician shortage has been a conversation that's been had, for the past few years as people really found it more difficult to find good quality techs to bring into their shop. And then throw a pandemic in the midst of everything. What have you noticed over really this past year within a pandemic, specifically within recruiting for the automotive repair business?
So it was really interesting going into the pandemic, right? I think it was mid-March when everything kind of shut down and everybody freaked out, right? It was kind of your focus shifts from trying to find talent in your shop to trying to keep the doors open, right? You don't know what's going to happen, and it's a really scary time. And that's before we knew that the PPP was going to have really any impact. And so trying to make decisions on your future based on that was really, really difficult. And ultimately, your job was to keep the doors open, and that's you're doing it however you possibly could. So we noticed that for the first couple of months, it was really, really dire. Obviously, nobody was hiring, even technicians. And it really became just what can we do to keep the industry rolling? And we did this support repair shops thing just to try and help shops out and get them to sell gift cards, really just utilizing a platform that we had come up with, WrenchWay. So that was short-lived. We planned for that to be short-lived. But then it was funny because when we hit June, it was almost like a light switch went back on again. And it was back to the Wild West of technicians, of trying to find the technicians. And one of the things that I said going into the pandemic, or as we were kind of approaching April, May, was, to me, there was a huge opportunity. And of course, it's easy for me to say I don't own my own shop. I did grow up in a shop, but like for me, it was an opportunity to do something different than everybody else was doing. And at that time, there were a lot of technicians in the market. We were getting flooded with applications all over the nation. And there were a couple shops that kind of took my advice, I guess, and ran into it and really tried to work hard at it, and knowing that they were getting the PPP and that kind of stuff really helped. But I kind of challenged shops during that time and said, when are you ever going to run into a market where the amount of technicians that are looking out, is more than the amount of jobs that are open? And I don't know that that'll ever happen again. It was just a really, really different time. So, but since then, things have gone back to the way they were prior to the pandemic. And granted, we're still in the pandemic, but really from the time like pre-COVID to now, there's not a lot of differences. Shops still seem to be really, really busy, and they're hiring really, really aggressively. So it's a very competitive market again. That did change for a couple months, but it's kind of like right back to where it was before that.
Absolutely. And especially when it comes to automotive repair, I mean, we have been labeled as essential businesses because there are still people that need to get around, and, they need their cars to be reliable, safe, and, just well maintained. So, while there was that, moment of ultimately panic for a lot of business owners, nobody has been through this before. Nobody knew the direction to go. And like you had said, you're in survival mode. And you want to take care of the team that you have, not necessarily expand on it. But getting back into that, I think, one, that goes to show hope for a lot of people that were concerned of, how their business is going to bounce back. But two, I also think it really puts into perspective, this was a year for everybody to reflect on their business, on their team, on, just the things that are a part of their lives. And, finding good quality people that are going to support you through the good and the bad in both the business setting is more essential now than ever. So what would you say are some of the best ways to get your shop to stand out? Because I know that oftentimes is difficult for shop owners that are just like, I need someone in here, whether they have someone leave, whether their shop's growing. It's more of a, reactive approach. So what can they do to stand out?
Well, I think first and foremost, they have to know what makes them different, right? And it's like
Mm-hmm.
any type of marketing, as you well know, that unless you know what's unique about you, it's really hard to get that message out to everybody else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And shops too often still kind of fall into that default range of, I need a tech, I'm going to put a job ad out, and I'm going to have all these people apply, and then they're really, really surprised when nobody applies.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard because if you take it from a technician standpoint, where they go, say, to Indeed and they type in automotive technician and you name the city, like if you're in Philly, like you go look at automotive technician and out comes a list of 700 jobs. Yeah, exactly. And so when you put yourself in their shoes, it is overwhelming, really overwhelming. And they all kind of look the same, and not that, some are better written than others, but it's still text, and it's still, unless something catches their eye right off the bat, they're probably not going to stop and look at it. And maybe if a shop's reputation precedes them, or there's some other varying factor that helps them, they're not going to stop and look at your job. And so the days of just saying, hey, we need a tech, this is what we need from that tech, these are the qualifications that we're looking for, I think are gone. Like, you need to sell to a technician, and in order to do that, you need to know what's unique about your shop. And just a real quick thing that I've kind of been reminded of here lately is I gave a presentation at one point to a group of service shops, and one of the exercises that I used was, I said, okay, raise your hand if you offer free uniforms. And so everybody raised their hand. Said, raise your hand if you offer benefits. Like 3/4 of them kept their hands up. And we kept going through different things. And I said, now, when we look at this, how many of you uniquely had anything? And it kind of landed home with a lot of people, I felt like anyways, where there are times where I think as a shop owner, you think your shop is more unique than somebody else because of X, but everybody's going to say they have great customer service. Everybody's going to say that they have a great management team, which, by the way, is pretty funny to me, because most of the times it's the manager writing that they have.
Gotta love that. A little pat on the back, right?
Right. So, but like, you can kind of see the consistency of, there's things that shops think that they're unique with when they're really not. And they need to understand that piece and really do a deep dive into thinking of what makes me different than the neighboring shop. And I don't know that we do a great job of that.
You know what? And I think, this comes back to our original conversation that we had, and it really just holds true in everything that you're saying there. The automotive industry has traditions and just a way that they have come to learn how to run their shops. And not a lot has changed over the year in how a shop is managed. And there's still some very old values and mindsets that are carried over, especially if you're in a generational shop, right? So it's passed down through family members or for people who have worked in the business for years and years and years. And the new technicians coming in specifically, and the younger technicians coming in specifically, what are some of those, it's important for the shop to think, what are some of those unique benefits or value adds that you can have? And it really is a mindset change for the owners, especially if they've been in the business for so long and have come to, running their business a certain way.
Yeah, and what's unique about you and a lot of people listening to this is we grew up in the industry, right? And so I think we've seen the evolution or lack of evolution with shops as compared to how different maybe a person graduating tech school is right now. And so, it's funny. I just was giving a talk to a group of students in Phoenix last week, And I asked them, I'm like, what even intrigues you about getting into this industry? You know, it is dirty. And granted, we're trying to get away from the grease monkey mentality, but there's some level you're going to get dirty at some point, especially as a young technician.
Absolutely.
And so it was interesting to hear what their thoughts were. Some of them were family. That family had gotten them into the business, whether their grandfather or dad was a technician. But a lot of them that didn't have that tie-in, it came from YouTube. And so it came from them. Yeah, it came from them watching, one that was interesting to me was like drifting. Like they love drifting. And so that's what got them into being interested in cars. And I don't know if you're familiar with Hoonigan, but like Ken Block, like I love his content. And that was getting a lot of people into the industry because it makes them interested and it shows kind of the cool side of our industry. There is some level of adaptation that we need to understand that, maybe they're getting in it for different reasons, but realistically, a lot of these shop owners that have been in it for 30, 40 years, they probably got into it for the same reason. It was just a different kind of delivery method of how they got that information, right? So it might have been that their grandpa had a cool Camaro or something like that, and they thought that was cool. So it is, it's a difference in mindset a little bit, but it's probably not all that different when you get down to it.
Absolutely. I think it comes back to the whole idea of passion. This is definitely a passionate industry, right? People can remember their first car, the first time that they were inspired, and they just continued on from there. And a lot of even what we see is the people that become the owners of the shop or the managers of the shop. It's not necessarily because they have the business experience, but more so the longevity and the commitment and the loyalty to make sure the business is successful. So when it comes to recruiting and making sure they're building a team, we've seen many people be reactive. So what do you recommend to being a little bit more proactive in your search for building your team and growing your team over the long haul?
So this is one of the things that I'm most passionate about, right? In general, is going on offense rather than defense. And we're so used to like, oh my goodness, Jimmy quit. We need to fill that role right now. Rather than taking an actual plan and executing on that plan. And it might sound very secondary because a lot of what you're doing is, again, what we talked about in going through that pandemic. You're going to make bad hires, and it's because you're making you're making hires reactively. So you're, instead of finding that right person that fits your culture and fits, kind of how you do things, it ends up being, I need somebody now because I'm getting yelled at by these customers. And so you hire the next person that comes in the door and are frustrated in 2 months when it's not who you thought they were. And so by being proactive, ultimately at Find a Wrench, that's really what we're doing, is trying to create a big funnel of people to really let a shop see the differences and see that there are different personalities. We're really bad as an industry of just saying like, here's this technician bucket, they're all the same, and good luck. It's not that way. They're all individuals, and we kind of need to look at that in a different light, and then find those individuals that fit your values, fit really your mission and what you're doing in your shop. And by doing that proactively, you should be able to see more people.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So Jay, tell me a little bit more, and let's let everybody know who's tuning into this live and who's going to be watching it later. Let us know a little bit about what Find a Wrench and WrenchWay are doing for automotive repair shops now. I know that this has been an exciting time as you're launching this new brand. So tell us a little bit more about how you can help.
Yeah, so on the Find a Wrench side, and I think the important element to remember, and it's hard to grasp, right, is Find a Wrench and WrenchWay are two separate things. Find a Wrench is far more of that employer branding, similar to recruiting, but I would say not recruiting, right? We're essentially getting your job posted out everywhere. So all of the job boards, all of the social media areas, so Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever you might be, again, trying to create that funnel where we get visibility to your job. Now, there is still some level of the shop needs to participate in making sure that they have an attractive enough job to.
Of course.
But that is a part of what we try to coach our clients up on and really try to get home with them. So that's still the recruiting side. The WrenchWay side is what we've launched that probably about 8 months ago, and it is really, really exciting because I think it changes a lot of things in the way that technicians look at a shop. And really with WrenchWay, it starts off with our top shops pages. A typical shop gets a top shops page. They put their photos on there. They put some, we call it under the shop or under the hood information in there that is really transparency. It's promoting transparency in your job offering and what makes you better than the neighboring shop. And then we just recently added video to it as well. And they're not meant to be overly produced videos, but more of videos that are taken with your iPhone and kind of show off the personality of your shop. And we use my dad's shop as a guinea pig. And it's funny too, because we went from anywhere of like, what's it like to work here? And so they talk about that the good-natured ribbing that goes on in the shop and all of that, all the way down to like the type of music that they listen to in the shop, so
Love
like
that.
Yeah, so you're trying to get that personality out a little bit. And again, you're trying to find ways or you're trying to find different avenues that make you unique. And that's another way of doing that. So, and then on top of that, we're actually launching it's under the WrenchWay umbrella. It's a piece of this, but something that we call WrenchWay School Connect. We're actually doing a roundtable on that tonight, but it's essentially a way for shops to connect with schools at a deeper level. And so we're going to give schools their own WrenchWay pages, their School Connect pages, and they can put projects out there. So they can say, hey, we need a training aid. We need somebody to come speak at our school. But really trying to help evolve that relationship between shop and school. And really, we're trying to help build that pipeline, right? We have a long-term problem here that we've honestly, as an industry, kind of ignored for a long time. So on top of using your WrenchWay page to be able to promote to technicians in your area right now, we've got the school piece maybe for that long-term side of trying to get engaged with your school, trying to build their program so that essentially you can maybe hopefully stop the Wild West that is technicians right now.
No, and this is amazing. I know we had a chance to talk before, so we'll be sure to make sure that, in the comments below, anybody who's interested in getting a hold of your team and potentially looking at the opportunities you're able to provide them, we will provide all the information below. But this is definitely something that shops need to take advantage of and be proactive with and change their mindset. So hopefully this gave some practical tips of how your shop can really stand out and be proactive in their hiring process. So Jay, I appreciate the time today. It was a pleasure having you on. And thank you everyone for tuning in. And if you have any questions, make sure to follow up in the comments and we will be sure to post some answers. But thanks so much for joining, Jay.
Yes, this was great. Thank you so much.
Awesome.